cipher and decipher, moles and double agents, intelligence and counterintelligence, all the mechanisms and processes that form part of this spy network. Espionage, the ability to know what your opponent knows without them knowing that you know. Welcome to the Why in History. I am Ajay Kaul, and today we look at some of the most impactful and effective spy operations in modern times. Finding an escaped Nazi criminal and bringing him back to justice is the first story in today's episode. When he first joined the Austrian Nazi Party in 1932, few would have predicted that Adolph Eichmann would become a mass murderer. Eichmann swiftly rose through the ranks of the party, and by 1935, he was already helping the party plan its answers to the so-called Jewish question, which was the Nazi terminology for a debate over how European Jews needed to be treated. In January of 1942, Eichmann met with top Nazi officials at the Wannsee conference near Berlin for the purpose of planning a final solution to the Jewish question. And the Nazis decided to exterminate Europe's Jewish population. Eichmann himself was appointed to coordinate the identification, assembly, and transportation of millions of Jews from occupied Europe to the Nazi death camps. During that time, Eichmann was the executor in charge, and between 3 to 4 million Jews perished in the extermination camps before the end of World War II. About 2 million were executed elsewhere. Now, after World War II, many of the architects of the Holocaust were arrested, tried at Nuremberg, and executed. But Eichmann was able to escape justice. Eichmann was captured by Americans at the end of World War II, but he escaped custody. And he traveled through post-war Europe, changing his identity multiple times. Finally, in Italy, he was helped by Catholic priests and bishops with pro-Nazi sympathies to escape to Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1950. Why Argentina? Post-World War II, Argentina had become a safe haven for Nazis. Once in Argentina, Eichmann assumed a new identity, Ricardo Clement, and his family joined him soon after, and they led a quiet life. He worked various jobs to support his family, but as I mentioned before, since Argentina was a safe haven for Nazis, he didn't make any secret of his past and maintained social ties with other escaped Nazis. US intelligence did receive some tips about possibility of Eichmann being in Argentina, but at the time, they were not interested in hunting Nazis. But in 1948, a new state was born, and it was very interested in finding Eichmann. The state was Israel. Lothar Hermann was a partially blind Jewish refugee who had fled to Argentina after being imprisoned at the Dachau concentration camp in Germany. Ironies of life. Hermann discovered Eichmann in Argentina through his daughter Sylvia, who was dating one of Eichmann's sons. Hermann and his daughter Sylvia had gone to a restaurant to get introduced to the family of the boy that Sylvia was dating. Now, Hermann was partially blind, and Eichmann introduced himself as Ricardo Clement, but Hermann was able to recognize Eichmann's voice. So Hermann promptly wrote to Germany with this information about Eichmann. A German Jewish judge, Fritz Bauer, was the one who got this information, and he asked for more detail. So Hermann provided Eichmann's address. But Fritz Bauer, the judge, was worried that some of the Nazi sympathizers within Germany would alert Eichmann. So Bauer tipped off Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service. Now, Mossad had been searching for Eichmann for over a decade. So when they received the tip in 1958, they initially discounted the intelligence. But by 1960, Mossad decided to stake out Eichmann's home and see if they could confirm whatever information Hermann had provided. The pictures definitely matched, but it was only on March 21 when one of the agents who was watching the Eichmann house with binoculars observed that the family was hosting a celebratory dinner. And that date matched Eichmann's wedding anniversary. Now, Mossad's goal was not just to capture Eichmann, but to bring him back to Israel where he could be tried publicly for his crimes. But the problem was, it was not easy to extradite Eichmann because Argentina, as I mentioned before, was a safe haven for Nazis. So Israel decided to use Argentina's 150th Independence Day celebrations to use as a backdrop to capture Eichmann and bring him to Israel. Israeli diplomats would fly an Israeli plane into the country under the guise of joining the Independence Day celebration, and the spies would then use that plane to fly Eichmann back to Israel. So on May 11, Mossad operatives descended on Garibaldi Street in Buenos Aires and captured Eichmann as he was walking away from the bus stop to his home. Interestingly, Eichmann's family called local hospitals, but not the police. And they called his friends for help, but most of their old Nazi friends fled the city, scared that Germany or some other foreign power had descended upon Argentina to extradite them. On May the 20th, a drugged Eichmann was flown out of Argentina disguised as an Israeli airline worker who had suffered head trauma in an accident. And 3 days later, Prime Minister Ben-Gurion announced that Eichmann was in Israeli custody. Argentina demanded that Eichmann be returned, but Israel argued that his status as an international war criminal gave it the right to proceed with the trial. On April 11, 1961, Eichmann's trial began in Jerusalem, and it was the first trial to be televised in history. Eichmann faced 15 charges, including crimes against humanity, crimes against the Jewish people, and war crimes. He was found guilty on all counts on December the 15th and sentenced to death. And on May 31st, 1962, Adolph Eichmann was hanged near Tel Aviv. This entire operation is depicted in the movie Operation Finale, which stars Ben Kingsley as Adolph Eichmann. But if we were to look for the intelligence coup of the 20th century, it would have to be Operation Rubicon, conducted by the CIA and its West German counterpart, the BND. For more than half a century, governments all over the world trusted a single company to encrypt the communication of their spies, soldiers, and diplomats. The company was the Swiss firm Crypto AG, and it made millions of dollars selling equipment to more than 120 countries well into the 21st century. And its clients included Iran, the military juntas in Latin America, India, Pakistan, and even the Vatican. But what none of these customers knew was that Crypto AG was secretly owned by the CIA in a highly classified partnership with West German intelligence, the BND. And these two agencies rigged Crypto AG's devices so that they could easily break the codes that these countries used to send encrypted messages. The operation was first known by the codename Thesaurus and later Rubicon, and it is considered among the most audacious operations in CIA history. Now, Crypto AG was a Swiss company, and its relationship with the US began during World War II. Boris Hägglin was the company's founder, and he fled to the United States when the Nazis occupied Norway in 1940. During World War II, Hägglin won a contract to supply the US military with his M209 encryption machines. These were portable hand-powered machines and were used by US forces mainly to send encoded communications for quick combat maneuvers. After the war, Hägglin returned to Sweden, but then he moved his company to Switzerland in 1952 to avoid Sweden's export restrictions and high tax burden. During his time in the US, Hägglin had built a strong friendship with US Army Colonel William Friedman, and Friedman was described as the father of modern American cryptology. And after World War II, when Hägglin announced that he was working on a highly secure cipher machine, the National Security Agency, or the NSA, sent Colonel Friedman to strike a deal that would deny secure machines to certain countries. What this meant was that the sophisticated models would be sold to the countries approved by the United States, and countries not on that list would get older, weaker systems. And Hägglin would be compensated for his lost sales by as much as $700,000 upfront. And in 1960, the CIA took over from the NSA and entered into a licensing agreement with Hägglin, by which they paid him $855,000 to renew the earlier commitment, and also they paid him $70,000 a year in retainer. The US officials also tried to push Hägglin to allow US cryptologists to doctor his machines, but Hägglin refused them outright. In the mid-1960s, though, the US intelligence agencies found an opportunity to influence Hägglin again. In the mid-1960s, with the emergence of electronic circuits, the era of mechanical crypto devices was coming to an end, and Hägglin desperately needed help to adapt to the new technology in order to survive his competition. In the integrated circuits-based encryption, what was being done was that endless streams of randomly generated characters were being generated. And the NSA experts realized that if these endless stream of characters could be made to repeat in short enough intervals, then the encryption could easily be decoded. And subsequently, in 1967, crypto rolled out an all-new electronic model, the H460, whose inner workings were completely designed by the NSA. And as in the past, the company made two versions of its products: the secure models that would be sold to friendly governments, and the rigged ones to the rest of the world. And the codes from the rigged ones could be cracked in a matter of seconds due to the subpar encryption algorithm in place. Around this time too, Hägglin was looking to retire, and the CIA, in partnership with the German spy agency BND, agreed to chip in equally to buy out crypto for approximately $5.75 million. And to keep this deal a secret, a new holding entity was created in Liechtenstein, which is a tiny country in Europe, notorious for its secretive banking and corporate ownership laws. So to the rest of the world, crypto is still around under new ownership and management. And at this point, all the nations that were crypto customers started having their secret communications eavesdropped upon by the CIA and the BND. And this continued for the next 50 years, though the BND dropped out of the partnership around 1993. The NSA's eavesdropping setup for many years was organized around three main geographic targets. Each had its own alphabetic code, so it was A for the Soviets, B for Asia, and G for everywhere else. And by 1980s, more than half of the intelligence gathered by Group G was flowing through crypto machines. So what kind of information did the US spy agencies get out of this eavesdropping? In 1978, the leaders of Egypt, Israel, and the United States had gathered at Camp David for negotiations on a peace accord, and the NSA was secretly monitoring the communications of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat with Cairo. The NSA also intercepted Libyan communications indicating that the President Jimmy Carter's brother, Billy Carter, was advancing Libya's interests in Washington and was on Muammar Gaddafi's payroll. The FBI launched an investigation into Billy Carter, and in the end, he agreed to register as a foreign agent. In 1982, the Reagan administration took advantage of Argentina's reliance on crypto, funneling intelligence to Britain during the Falklands War. Interestingly, it was Ronald Reagan who sort of blew the cover on Operation Rubicon, meaning the CIA ownership of Crypto AG. And this happened after Libya was implicated in the 1986 bombing of a West Berlin disco, which led to the deaths of 2 US soldiers and a Turkish woman. Reagan ordered retaliatory strikes against Libya 10 days later and provided a lot of detail as evidence of Libya's complicity in the attack. Details that showed that Libya's embassy in East Berlin had received orders to carry out the attack a week before it had happened. And the day after the bombing, they had reported back to Tripoli on the success of their mission. So Libya immediately realized that their communications were being intercepted and decrypted. But along with that, Iran, which was another customer of crypto, became suspicious because it knew that Libya also used crypto machines. Argentina too became convinced that its crypto equipment had helped Britain in the Falklands War. There were other controversies that erupted, including the kidnapping of a crypto employee by Iran. But by the late 1990s, almost half a dozen countries, including Argentina, Italy, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Indonesia, cancelled or suspended their crypto contracts, mainly on suspicion that foreign governments were eavesdropping upon them. And as I mentioned before, Germany withdrew from the partnership by 1993, worried about the backlash once this information became public. But the CIA continued through 2018 and ultimately gave up its stake when crypto itself started falling behind technology and its competition. And it is Operation Rubicon that is often blamed for the addiction of American spy agencies to global surveillance. The first documented case of cyber espionage was carried out by a group of German computer hackers between September 1986 and June 1987. In the 1980s, the Soviet spy agency, the KGB, was looking for a way to steal US military secrets through two relatively new precursors to the internet, the ARPANET and the MILNET. And to do that, they found and recruited a group of German computer hackers led by Marcus Hess. This group hacked into the networks of American defense contractors, universities, and military bases and sold the information to the Soviet KGB. Hess and his team began their hacking mission from the University of Bremen in Germany. They were able to hack into US military computers that were used at bases around the world, like in Germany and Japan. Some computers were used by MIT for research, and there was one used by the Pentagon. Hess was able to get into Pentagon's database by guessing the superuser password. Now, during that time, not much thought was given to password security. So a lot of folk used to have the word password as their password. And Hess and his team went undetected until a systems administrator and astronomer named Clifford Stoll discovered a minor accounting error at a laboratory in California. Stoll found a 75-cent error in the computer usage at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory in California, which conducted scientific research for the US Department of Energy. Stoll tried to track down where the 75-cent discrepancy came from and traced it to an unauthorized and unknown user who had used the lab's computer system for 9 seconds without paying. And as he investigated further, he found that this unauthorized user was a skilled hacker who had gained access to the super user account. It took Stoll about 10 months to track down the whereabouts of the hacker and figure out what exactly the hacker was doing. And he realized that the hacker was accessing the computer systems at military bases throughout the United States. So Stoll quickly contacted the authorities, ranging from the US military to the CIA, NSA, and FBI, and they were able to trace the hacker's physical whereabouts to a West German university. So they set up a scam, inventing a fake department at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory to make it look like it was working with the US military. And when the hacker took the bait and tried to access the fake department's files, they were able to track him right to his house in Hanover, West Germany. And at that point, West German authorities, working with the US, stormed the house of Marcus Hess and arrested him. Hess was found guilty of espionage and sentenced up to 3 years in prison. But the true impact to the US military from the espionage was not clear. It was stated that Hess had obtained sensitive information, but none of it was top secret. Hess was later released on probation, and Cliff Stoll captured this story in his book, The Cuckoo's Egg. And it is here that we end this section of the program. On to the quiz section. Question from the previous episode. Which 3 countries are in the top 10 tea and coffee producers in the world? India, Indonesia, and Vietnam figure in the top 10 tea producers as well as the top 10 coffee producers in the world per the 2021 statistics. So the answer is B, India, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Question for the current episode. The Five Eyes Alliance is an intelligence alliance among 5 countries which share a broad range of intelligence with one another. So which countries are members of this alliance? Are these A, the US, UK, France, Germany, and Italy? B, the US, UK, Taiwan, Netherlands, and Belgium? C, the US, UK, Finland, Mexico, and South Africa? Or D, the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand? Once again, which countries are members of the Five Eyes Alliance? Are these A, US, UK, France, Germany, and Italy? B, US, UK, Taiwan, Netherlands, and Belgium? C, US, UK, Finland, Mexico, and South Africa? Or D, US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand? The answer will be provided in the next episode. That's all we have in the current episode. In the next episode, we take a deep look into the Ukraine-Russia conflict from the start of the war to where things stand today. The invasion, the withdrawals, and the blunders committed during the course of the war. Till then, stay safe and keep looking for the why in history.